Now this is how you do a reprint. TCAL. Okay, I love TCAL. TCAL is it's one of my favourite games actually. This whole series of the Mask trilogy by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling, and now the Mask trilogy is slowly coming back. A couple of years ago, Super Meeple released their new version of Mexica. Mexica, another classic game from the trilogy, and their new version had these fantastic little carved pieces that were much heavier and more sort of clay-like, rather than the old plastic colourful versions that I've got in my old edition. I didn't quite buy into it because I like this box art. I like the way it matches with TCAL and my favourite of the trilogy, Java. And I missed that. I missed that sort of appearance. But now, this year, TCAL at Essen Spiel 2017 has replaced the little cardboard pieces that we stack to make the temples in the game with little pieces of solid moulded material that stacks to make these pyramids of different heights. So I mean, have you've probably come across the game Cthulhu Wars with its fantastic large miniatures, which sort of stretch the definition of what a miniature is. Well, this is my Cthulhu Wars, right? I'm not interested in big pink plastic aliens and that sort of thing, but little stacking bakelite or clay or whatever they are, little stacking temples. Yeah, that's my Cthulhu Wars. I cannot wait to see what Super Meeple does next year with Java, assuming that Mexico and TCAL have sold well enough for them to do so. And actually, I'm going to buy in despite the lack of the mask artwork on the front, because everything looks so nice. This is my introduction to Spiel 2017, the largest convention for board games in the world, rivaled only by Gen Con in the United States. It's coming up in 4 weeks, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about which publishers I'm interested in visiting and which games I'm interested in picking up. And I'll also be there pitching my own designs, and I've got 2 games launching at the fair as well, which I'll probably mention a little bit later on. So, right, Spiel 2017. I think this is a year where there's lots of great reprints. I mentioned Super Meeple. Not only are they doing the TCAL, Mexica and Java sort of range, hopefully Java next year, they've also got a new version of Rudiger Dorn's Louis XIV. Now this is a great little game, Louis XIV, and the new version, Mafioso, replaces this really boring sort of Renaissance artwork with anthropomorphic animals in a mafia sort of mobster type thing. Now this is not a straight reprint, this is a complete overhaul of the system. And again, it's an example of how reprints should be done. It looks absolutely fantastic. I've no idea whether the mechanisms have been improved. This was a great game in its own right, but this is very hard for me to get anyone to play. How boring does this look? And the new version looks so much better, so I'm sure it's going to see a lot more play. So that's Mafioso, but it's not the only reprint coming up. We have a reprint of In a Bind by Bez. Okay, now Bez is a friend of mine, another designer from the UK, and this little card game where you're sticking things under your chin and under your armpit and behind your ears and all the rest of it has been picked up by Gigamic and is being released as a game called Yogi. Okay, this is definitely one to look at if you haven't yet tried In a Bind. It's a great party game, accessible for all players, all ages. You know, everyone can have a good time with that. I think one of the big hits of the fair is going to be When I Dream. Everyone's been looking for the next Codename Spyfall, right? The next big party game. Suddenly party games are big news, and over the last couple of years at Essen we're seeing more and more of these sort of games coming out. One of the little known ones last year was When I Dream, and of course it's had quite a lot of buzz behind it with various YouTube channels and things talking a lot about it. And now we have this fantastic new version coming out from Repost Productions with far more cards. One of the complaints about the previous version was there weren't enough cards with words on, so you pretty soon were seeing the same words over and over again. Now I think they've done something like quadrupled the number of words by making the cards double-sided and increasing the size of the deck. They've added in a whole ton of fantastic new artwork, so we've got that sort of surrealist art, almost Dixit-like art in the game, and then this little sort of 3D bed that holds the cards in place. And talking of Dixit, what would Essen Spiel be without a new Dixit set? So this time round we have, what's it called? What is the new Dixit called? I've no idea. Doesn't really matter. What we've got is a deck of fantastic, beautiful Dixit artwork to mix back into our set again. And that's not the only thing coming from Libelud. If ever there was a seal of quality, it's the name Libelud on the box. And we have a game which is a partnership between Libelud and Pearl Games, and it's called Otis. It's a post-apocalyptic sort of world where the cities are all underwater. And basically it's a straight-up, you know, resource management with some clever Euro mechanisms, but some beautiful artwork on that box there. I think that looks great, Otis. I'm really looking forward to trying that one out. But back to the reprints, we've got London. So we're starting to get all these old games. A lot of them have already come back. So we've seen reprints over the last couple of years of things like Ra and Tigris and Euphrates and Samurai coming from Fantasy Flight, or they were called Wind Rider for a while, or and you know, now Asmodee owns all these different things. But we're starting to see more and more of like finding, right, what are those lesser known classics, I suppose. And Martin Wallace has got a couple of them. He's got Brass, which is coming up next year in a reprint from Roxley Games. But at Essen Spiel, we're going to have this new version of London, and I have to say it looks absolutely fantastic. I've never played London before, but looking at the mechanisms, it just the feel of it and the structure of it reminds me a little bit of one of my favourite games, Abyss. I may be way off track there, I've not actually played the game, but London, the new version, looks beautiful. The art style they've chosen, it's so traditional and yet a very modern graphic design. Everything looks clear. I like the iconography. I think Osprey Games are doing a fantastic job with that. And actually, it's not the only game from Osprey Games that I'm interested in. I also like the look of Lost Expedition. Now, again, the graphic design is a feature here. I like the simplicity of all the different icons and everything, but I must admit the big draw is that almost Belgian comic style artwork, almost Tintin-esque, Hergé's Tintin. This being a cooperative game, I believe it can be played competitively in some way. I'm not quite sure about that, but essentially it's a very thematic, we go on an adventure, we turn over these cards and we see what happens, and then we try and, you know, make our way through this mission with all these different hazards that are going to hit us. So, London, Lost Expedition, coming from Osprey Games. Not the only reprints. There's also a reprint of the classic Manhattan. I can't remember who's doing this, but the new version has this really odd sort of tropical island setting. The game's called Manhattan, right? But it looks like it's been taken out of Manhattan, and it's got these sort of extremely colourful, bright, almost translucent pieces. It looks a bit psychedelic compared to the old, you know, very sort of sober original version of Manhattan. Now, this is an old Spiel des Jahres winner from 1994, so this has been around for a while now, from the same designer as Puerto Rico. And it's a beautiful, simple game that you can play with families, you can play with children. I've had a great time with Manhattan. It's a bit of a forgotten classic. And this is all beginning to make me wonder what else could come back over the next few years. What other forgotten classics are there? There's Glenmore from the same series as Louis XIV. In fact, I've heard rumblings online that there's going to be a new version of that at some point. I'd like to see a new version, another Rudiger Dawn game, Die Baumeister from Arcadia. So I'm making a call out there. I want Super Meeple to do it, okay, because they're really good at it. Let's have a Super Meeple remake of Arcadia, please. Yeah, mark that up. That's definitely happening. And Maharaja, this one from Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling again. Why not one of these as well? Yeah, again, Super Meeple, please. Another great little Euro game there. Right, so reprints all over the place. We've also got Torres coming from Hook and Friends. Torres, another, it's very similar to this Mask trilogy, really. Lots of action points and using those in all sorts of different ways. But this is more of an abstract strategy game. This is a more straight up remake. It's very pretty, but nothing's dramatically changed here. Okay, next up on the reprint front, I think everyone should be looking at Hanamikoji. Now, Hanamikoji was one of the darlings of Essen 2016, but it's been quite hard to get ever since then, and it's starting to hit distribution now, I think, with Cosmos. But originally, at 2016 Essen, it was from a company called Emperor S4, and this year, they've got a whole series of games that are so beautiful, in a similar way to Hanamikoji. Such lovely sort of... I don't know where this is from. Is it Japanese, Taiwanese? I'm not sure. It's that sort of beautiful art style, and it makes me not want to look at what the games are about, because I want to get to Essen and I want to sample it fresh. I have that feeling about lots of companies at Essen. I always take that approach with Zoc, Verlag, and with Amigo. They have so many fantastic games, and I want to sit down and go, right, tell me what it's all about. I don't want to look it up on the preview beforehand. So Amigo has this whole range of great little card games. They're always really simple. They're always really cheap. You can just stick them in a pocket. They're really small. Love them. Zoc has this weird sense of humour, this strange sort of quirky look at the world, and their games are always have these interesting little mechanisms. They're not always brilliant games, but they're always really interesting, and you can see actually behind me I've got loads of Zoc Verlag games, because I really like that slightly offbeat approach. In fact, one of my friends, another designer from the UK, Brett Gilbert, has a game with Zoc coming out this year, so I'll definitely be having a look at that. And the other company that I always like to look at is Blue Orange, with their children and families games. This year, their game Photosynthesis looks absolutely beautiful. How many games are there this year that are about nature, about trees and blossom and fruits and... You know, it seems to be... I mean, previous years we've sort of gone, oh, there's a glut of games about Vikings, or... You know, do we need any more games about pirates, really? But this year, you know, how many games do we need about Blossom? There's plenty of them to go around at Essen Spiel in 2017. So, Photosynthesis, another game from Brett Gilbert, Fantastic Park. And then my own game is coming out from Blue Orange, which is Big Bazaar. Now, this is a little family game I designed. It's a sort of speed matching game, and you're sort of jungle speed sort of world, but for young players. You know, this is age 6+. I think older children can really enjoy it, and actually with a few little tweaks you can really play it with adults and have a good time with it too. But essentially, lovely little children's game. Well, I hope other people enjoy it. I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone thinks of my game Big Bazaar. Actually, that's not the only one of my games that's coming out at Essen Spiel. There's also Doodle Rush from Brain Games. Now, Doodle Rush is a speed drawing game, a very fast one. You know, the whole game lasts 6 minutes, and it's got 6 separate rounds in it. So each round is 1 minute. 1 minute of drawing, 1 minute of guessing. 1 minute of drawing, 1 minute of guessing. All of it simultaneous. Everyone running around the table, showing each other their pictures, trying to get them guessed in order to score points, swapping over their boards that they've been drawing on. Chaotic. Fun, okay, real crazy sort of laughter stuff. If you could think of sort of Inky Squid, that was my prototype name. What I mean is Happy Salmon. If you think of Happy Salmon but as a drawing game, something like that, that's what you're getting with Doodle Rush. And I love the fact that Brain Games has gone with similar art style to Ice Cool, their Kinderspiel des Jahres winner. I love the fact it's in that same range. What a great range to be in with those other Brain games. So coming back to the reprints. Okay, we've got Bottle Imp. That is I'm told, a really good trick-taking game. One of the classics, and yet I've never played it. It's great to see a new version of that. Maybe we'll see modern art from Cool Mini or not. I really like modern art, but the previous versions of it all been terrible, considering, I mean, the production values. Considering it's a game about art, I'd love to see something with some great art in it, and I think this new version certainly looks like the best yet. There's the game Steamrollers that I'm interested in, another reprint, this time of a sort of roll and write game from a couple of years ago, but getting a wider distribution. I love roll and write games. I love rolling dice and then writing things down and working out that puzzle, and it looks like a good one. Expansions. Dream Home has a new expansion. Dream Home was one of the best games from Essen Spiel last year, I thought. Very simple, family-style game, nice drafting, beautiful production. I thought it was, it seems to have been a bit overlooked, but it's obviously sold well enough to get an expansion, and so I'll certainly be picking that up. Magic Maze, this is certainly not a game that's been overlooked. This has had a whole load of buzz and was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres, and this has the maximum security expansion coming out. I love Magic Maze. This is unlike any other game. Real-time, cooperative, can't speak to each other, crazy, over in a few minutes again, like you know, like I was talking about with some other games. Magic Maze, fantastic. Can't wait for an expansion for that. And then we have this new version of Catacombs coming out, Catacombs and Castles. Catacombs is a fantastic flicking game, like a dungeon crawl, but we're actually flicking discs to fight the monsters and move around the dungeon. It's absolutely incredible, but it's a beast of a game. There's so many rules and so many exceptions and so many icons. It's a hard one to get into. And so this version promises to be something simpler, Catacombs and Castles, like a standalone game, but an introductory version to that system. Companies that I'm looking out for. Jolly Thinkers. I always love what Jolly Thinkers do. They produce games like Pick a Pig, Pick a Dog, Bucket King 3D, and then also Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, which you may know a bit better than these games. But I like their weird little quirky art style, that real Hong Kong sort of look to it. And there's a new game coming out called Bye Bye Black Sheep from the same designer as Pick a Pig and Pick a Dog, Torsten Landsvold. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Torsten. That's enough for me. Okay, the artwork's a slightly different style. It's almost a bit more sort of 3D animation sort of style, but still with those sort of farmyard animals in there. It looks great. The gameplay, very, very simple. This is not going to be for everybody. It's just a case of grab a card from somebody else, swap the cards around, try and make a set. Very frantic, sort of. It looks like chaotic, you know. I doubt there's a huge strategy in here, but those games are just fun. Really enjoyed their game Fruit Spy from last year's Essen. Then we've got the more serious strategy type games that I'm interested in. DLP have a new bag builder. They did all Leons before. Now they've got this one, Altiplano. DLP is, again, a mark of quality. If you've got a DLP game, you know it's going to be pretty good. So I think Altiplano, I'm not the only one looking forward to that. I think that's going to get quite some buzz around it. Matago. Love Matago games. They've got this game Meeple Circus, a little stacking game with little circus wooden pieces. I love stacking games. If the pieces can all be little circus pieces, all the better. I'd love to stack a little elephant on top of a strong man and, you know, balance them on a ball or whatever. It looks like there's actually some mechanisms in there as well. You know, it's not just the stacking. We're taking cards and scoring points in various different ways, trying to fulfill objectives. Looks fun. Okanagan. Okay, Okanagan is a tile-laying game. It looks like a cross between Carcassonne and Cacao. But I like the little wooden pieces, the little wooden huts and things, and whether you place them in the middle of the tile or on the side of a piece of terrain or bang in the middle of a piece of terrain has a different effect. So it's got that placement of Carcassonne with the sort of area majority aspects of Cacao. It looks very similar to those two games in terms of its mechanisms, and I wonder whether it's in quite a tight space there, you know, whether it can find its own identity amongst those. But it looks good, and you can, again, Matago, you can guarantee it's going to be a quality product. Lookout Games have a couple of big ones then. Nussfjord, which is the new Uwe Rosenberg game. This one apparently is a bit lighter than his more recent games, although it still takes a couple of hours to play. And it's got some sort of stock share distribution stuff where, you know, I can gather up fish, but other people might have shares in my fishing company and so score points based off my actions. Aside from that, similar sort of worker placement, tile laying, building out your own player board that you've seen in a lot of other Uwe Rosenberg games like Agricola and Le Havre and Ora et Labora and so on and so forth over the years. But I do enjoy those games, and the lighter ones I probably enjoy even more. And then we've got Michael Kiesling's game Riverboat, also coming from Lookout. Michael Kiesling, one of that Kramer-Kiesling classic partnerships that I mentioned with Tikal and Java and Mexica and Torres and Maharaja and all these others. Either Kiesling or Kramer, I'm interested. And if you throw in there some Clemens Franz artwork and Lookout Spiel are making the game, even more interested. Hopefully that one also going to be a really good game. So those are the main ones that I'm excited about. I'm sure there'll be many other Essen previews from other YouTubers over the coming weeks, and so hopefully they'll spark up some things that I hadn't noticed on W. Eric Martin's brilliant list of games on the Board Game Geek website. That's always a trove of information on there. So if you haven't seen that, get on the Board Game Geek website. On the front page there's a list of 800 games, I think it is currently, something like that, 750, 800 games coming out at Essen Spiel, and I'm sure it's going to get up to 1,000 over the coming weeks. So anyway, I hope this was of some interest to you, and I hope some of you are able to get to Essen Spiel. If you are, please feel free to come and grab me and say hi if you see me around, or send me a message beforehand and I'll come and grab you sometime. Or if you can't make it, then the great thing about Essen Spiel now is that these games are not hard to get after the event. It may take a few months, but if they're any good, they're gonna hit your regular store. I used to rush to the Japon brand booth, you know, to try and get those games because you couldn't get them anywhere else. Now, you wait a year and you'll probably get one, if it was any good in the first place, you'll probably get it produced by Pegasus Spieler or some other publisher, and they'll do a really nice version of it that you can pick up later on. So there's not that worry anymore that I must work out which of the games I'm not going to be able to get, because to be honest, if you're not going to be able to get them over the coming years, it's probably because they weren't really good enough in the first place. So that takes some of the pressure off. So even if you're not going to Essen Spiel, you're going to be able to enjoy these games over the coming months anyway, I'm sure. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Please watch my other videos. I'm Adam Porter. This is my channel, Adam's Board Game Wales, on Board Game Geek. I'm Adam78. On Twitter, I'm @BoardGameWales. Thank you very much for watching. All the best.